Hello and welcome to Simon Says Artwork. This is going to be the 26th, let me just check. I keep on losing count. 26th installment of the Inktober challenge. I'm drawing this with everything with my left hand until the 31st when I'll be drawing with both hands simultaneously. So this is all going to be going into my little black sketchbook. Again today, just like yesterday, I'll be using the Fudenosuke pen by Tombow, which is a lovely little brush pen, which is not actually bristles, but it's a flexible nib. I think it's a really nice little doodling pen, so if you come across one, I recommend it. So try it out for yourself, and okay, let's get started. Okay, so here we are, number 26, and I decided to pick my desk side plant because it's quite a nice shape. It's a cheese plant shape, and it just has really nice big leaves, so I thought if I use this pen to try and work on my lines, trying to get clean marks and just good kind of line width and expression with some of the marks, so things like that first curve there, and trying to get something which is accurate to an extent but also just slightly more dexterous with this hand, trying to build up a skill set ready for Monday, which I believe is the day when it's going to be the 31st. So it was just a careful process of picking through bits and bobs, just different shapes that you see, and trying to make sure that everything was proportionate and somewhat interesting as well, just so that it had a good spread across the page. Because part of the battle is to also make sure that the composition of the page is sound but also engaging for the viewer. Because sometimes things can be compositionally sound but not be necessarily that exciting to look at, and I'd like the viewers to see big shapes that even if they are line work, that they look like they're jumping out at you a little bit and just being kind of, giving that sense of depth to the subject. So that's what I was trying to do, and you can see from that first leaf, I think you can see it anyway, that I am trying to emphasize and heighten the foreshortening, the perspective on the leaves, and keeping it as line work made it become kind of an abstract image, really. I mean, not in its entirety, but each mark felt like abstraction, because you were drawing something which was such an unusual bending and curving and arcing shape that it just became something which I thought, I can't really see how this is going to look once I've done the whole leaf, but each mark itself is quite an interesting journey and pathway to follow. So I was quite engaged with the process. I was really enjoying the challenge. I mean, making another leaf here, it doesn't look as though it would be worth doing another leaf here, but I thought it's really going to change the layout of the page, and it's part of what I'm seeing there, but I'm not doing everything that I'm seeing. I'm just trying to make sure that the combination is something which is all relating to one another well, so that they sit together on the page and cover that space nicely, in order to kind of create this this nice suggestion on there. And that's what line work can offer, really, is suggestions as opposed to something which is really textured or literal. I mean, look at this shape. Because of the leaf being seen sideways, I had to consider the leaf. Now, you have to excuse my hand being in the way, but this is part of the problem with drawing with my left hand, is that I have to move my hand and arm in certain ways that work. But yeah, that shape was just a weird wobbly zigzag, but then I don't know if you can see it like I can, but I can see that as a leaf from sideways, and that's what I was seeing, is something which was similar to that. And then this other leaf here, I really just didn't think that I would ever draw shapes like this unless it's exactly what I was seeing, and that's what I was following, is some of these bizarre shapes. Sometimes I think if I were left to do this from imagination, just like how I drew a room from imagination and I had a houseplant on a desk, and I certainly didn't explore the different shapes that occur when you draw from a reference. That's something which I really need to try to inject into my drawings from imagination, is how you can get these strange contortions and perspectives that occur naturally. And at this point I thought, should I leave it like that with some floating leaves? I quite like the look of it, but I thought it's a little bit too simple and I'd rather ensure that I've done enough work. So after a brief pause, I start to include these what I'm going to call veins in the plant, although I'm sure that they have a name. To me they look like the veins of each leaf. And this was very tricky. This was far more tricky than drawing the outlines for the leaves, even though the leaves were really big, strange shapes. To try to get these thin, vein-like, lines and paths and strips which run along each of the leaves was kind of tricky, because once I draw the first line, I'd always want to accompany it with a second line to make it look like the veins that I was seeing on the leaves. So that was the tricky part, was to try and control the second line, to keep the distance uniform so that it looked something similar to what I was trying to represent. And it was great practice, but it was the most painful part, was thinking, oh God, I'm so tense trying to keep this neat, because if I don't, it won't look like what I'm trying to make it look like, and it'll change the drawing completely. It just wouldn't look good at all. But I was quite happy with how it turned out. I think that these smaller marks here really mean that the leaves are now given that additional kind of reality, I suppose, where initially it was only the outlines and you could do it completely blacked out as silhouette, but giving them these little veins is now giving it that additional sense of depth, where you can see that the veins are curving around the leaves and they show a little bit more of the perspective, and it's just a nice little additional pattern to the leaves, which is the truth of what you see. Great practice, as I was saying, as far as control. And I did find that that line which I made going up the leaf was quite good, because I did it fast and it stayed quite controlled. And part of me thinks that maybe if I go slower, my hand starts to wobble and I just don't get as nice a mark as I was intending to get. But there we are, that happens. And you can also see that sometimes when I press too hard, the line goes darker, because it is a flexible nib on this Fudenosuke pen, and that means that when the nib flexes, more ink is put onto the page. The flex means that the nib bends over and exposes more nib to the surface of the paper, and then you have a heavier mark. And that's not what I was hoping to get. I was trying to get wispy light marks for the inside of the leaf. But there we go, that's just part of what happens, and it's just part of the struggle of doing drawings like this. And then I thought, should I leave it there? And again, I really thought about it for a moment, and then I just thought, no, if I add the stems, it'll be a nice way to anchor these leaves to the pot. And that was the motivation. As soon as I did the first few marks, I thought, right, I'm committed. I now have to find a pathway for each of these leaves. And part of it was accurate, and part of it was trying to ensure that I wasn't using one stem twice. So the first stem that I drew wasn't for that second leaf. It was for the first leaf. So I had to draw the pathway for that second leaf to make sure that I was satisfied that each stem had a beginning and an end, as opposed to just saying, oh well, they can all group together. I really wanted it to be something where it became more mass the more that I drew, the more mass was created. at the base, because it was like that. When I looked at the plant, it did have a lot of stems all meeting into the centre, which made it just wider. That's what I mean by more mass, really. But some of the ways that the stems met up with the leaf was really strange, so that's why that one goes towards the almost towards the centre of the leaf. As you can see there, it just joins up in a strange place, and it wasn't where I initially thought it would be. But there we are, that's where it was. And there's the last one, and that's what I leave the drawing as. I thought it was quite nice, so I leave it there. Okay, so I decided to draw this plant here. This is my reference, and I didn't get the whole plant in, but I thought I'd keep it as a line work drawing. I quite like it. I think that's quite a nice line work sketch. For a left-handed drawing, I think it's showing some improvement. It was still a little bit tricky to get the lines right, but certain parts are improving. I must admit I avoided the hatching because I didn't really want to ruin the line work drawing, and that's what I did yesterday, is that I added shadow where I thought it was actually nicer as a line work sketch. So that's the reason why I didn't go beyond this stage, but I think it's quite a nice sketch the way that it is. And I hope that you liked the video. If you did, then please leave a like, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, ring that notification bell, share this with any friends or family who you think might like it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.